Welcome to another episode on our channel. So this is a time where I typically do it at least once a month, where I do a market trend analysis on the secondary market for Hot Toys figures and just sales in general on eBay in terms of 1/6 scale items. And so what I do is I type in 1/6 scale and hit return. And then I select items ending soonest. And then I just wait until items are sold. The items that are listed are sold or they don't sell, that sort of thing. And so I looked at 500 items again this time because I wanted a chunkier sample. And I've been doing 500 lately, so I've been kind of maintaining that process. The one thing that is positive for November is that out of the 500 items that were listed, and we're not just talking about Hot Toys items, but everything, out of the 500 1/6 scale items listed, whether it was shoes, pair of pants, head sculpt, complete Hot Toys figure, that sort of thing, out of the 500 items listed, 107 items sold. So that's like 1 in 5 items sold, a little over, just a touch over 1 in 5 items sold. So that's positive compared to other months. I haven't seen it this high for a long time. Now when we look at Hot Toys complete packages, the figure, the art box, all complete, art box and mailer box, there were 106 Hot Toys complete packages listed among the 500 items. All right, 106 listed. 68 of those items did not sell. Complete Hot Toys figures, to include art box and mailer boxes. And there were quite a number that people were listing for phenomenal prices in that list of 68 Hot Toys complete packages that did not sell. So if I look at $450 and above, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 of the 68 items were listed at $450 and above. The highest listed one was $849.99, which was a Batmobile, MMS 694. And those did not sell. So a lot of high-priced items did not sell. In fact, even when you look at 300 and above, quite a few items were listed at that amount. They did not sell. There were a couple items, I think 2, that were listed at $100. One was listed at $99 and it did not sell. Of course it depends on the figure, right? The one that was listed at $99 was a Star Wars Transport Trooper. That didn't sell at $99. One that was at $100 was a Star Wars Death Watch Mandalorian. That didn't sell it at $100. And the other $100 one was a First Order Stormtrooper Squad Leader, Star Wars, $100. It did not sell. So 68 items did not sell. So out of the 106, 68 did not sell. 38 did sell. Now, this is where it kind of gets, again, a little confusing sometimes for some people, but I find it fascinating. When I look at Sideshow list price and eBay sell price, I'm looking at a gross gain. When I start figuring in eBay sell fees, the cut that eBay takes for selling it on their forum, and maybe a guesstimate as to what Sideshow might have charged a person for buying this item in terms of taxes and shipping and handling, when I do that guesstimate, then the news isn't too hopeful. Let's just put it that way. So out of just looking at gross gains, Sideshow sell price, eBay list price. We're not even figuring in eBay's fee. We're not figuring in taxes or shipping and handling on Sideshow's end. We're just looking at gross gain. When we look at gross gain, and at the 38 items that sold, 14 of the items made a gross gain, or actually took a gross loss. 14 of the items took a gross loss of $100 or less between Sideshow sell price, eBay sell price. Gross loss of $100 or less, 14 of the items. 14 additional items out of 38 took a gross loss of $200 down to $101. So total of 28 items, 14 and 14, took a loss of $200 or less, right? 7 of the items listed took a loss of $201 or more. So 14 is 28, plus 7 is 35. 35 out of the 38 items had a gross loss. Just looking at Sideshow list price and eBay list price. Gross loss, 38 items. Only 3 had a gross gain. Only 3 gross gain. So the lowest gross gain was $26. And it was for a Scarlet Witch end game. All right, $26. Keep that in mind. $26 gross gain. Now I'm going to switch over to net gain. And the only thing I know for sure is that eBay takes a cut of 13.5% on sales. All right. So this item, this Scarlet Witch, sold for $351. And on eBay. So it sold for $351 at eBay. They bought it for $325 on Sideshow. All right. So that's a $26 gross gain. Now, I know eBay takes 13.5% in terms of a fee. So it sold for $351. And I'm going to multiply 351 by 13.5% or 0.135, which is 13.5%. So their cut for selling this item on their forum, their cut was rounded up $47.39. Let's just say $47. That was their cut, $47. So the $26 gross gain is already wiped out by the eBay sell fee. Now I went back and I looked at the last time I bought something from Sideshow that wasn't on sale. I think it was 2023. Mind you, Sideshow is located in California. I live in California. And I looked at that item in 2023. Taxes and shipping totaled $35. So I'm just going to use that number as a guesstimate, just a wild guesstimate as to what a person typically might be charged. You know, it's just a guesstimate. So if I add eBay's cut of $47, rounded off, 47, plus $35 for shipping and handling and taxes on Sideshow's end, that means that this person who bought this thing at Sideshow and sold it on eBay lost $82 when everything is said and done. They gained back $26 because that's the gross gain. So let me subtract 26 from 82. They lost $56 as a guesstimate. They for sure lost money on this deal just by the eBay list fee, that the cut that eBay took. But if I guesstimate it and factor in $35 from Sideshow, their net loss guesstimate would be about $56. So that for sure is a loss. No matter how you slice and dice it, it is a loss. If you only look at eBay sell fees, it's a loss. All right, so then we move on to the next gross gain. All right, so the next gross gain was $126 on a Black Widow Artisan special edition figure. $126. All right, they sold it for $511. Let's look at eBay's cut of a $511 sell price. 0.135, which is 13.5%. Rounded up, it's $68.98, so let's round it up to $69. eBay's take on that sale of $511 is $69. $69. So if I take $69 away from the 126 gross gain, $126, take $69 away from 126. Just looking at eBay fees, I'm walking away with a $57 gain. Now I'm starting to work into the net gain. $57 net gain when eBay fees are only applied. If I take the guesstimate of Sideshow, shipping and handling and taxes of $35, I take that guesstimate, if I figure that into the formula, that $57 is going to go down by $35, if that makes sense. So 57 minus 35. I'm going to guess that the net gain, not the gross gain, the gross gain was $126. The net gain, I'm going to guess, was $22. And then you wonder, is it worth the time and effort of listing it on eBay, waiting a week and seeing if there's a bidding war? What happens? You know, do you actually make money on it? Do you lose money on it? All that heartache that you go through, the anxiety you go through. Is it worth it all for $22? And I don't know. But they did make some money back. I mean, they actually went above. If my guesstimate is true of $35 from Sideshow, then they made $22 on this sale. Net gain. 126 gross, but 22 conservatively in terms of the net gain. And I'm only going with a guesstimate based on my 2023 purchase of an item that was not on sale at Sideshow, because I ended up spending $35 in California, and Sideshow is located in California. Anyway, that aside, the last gross gain was for $135.01, and it was a Hulk Avengers Hulk MMS 186. So $135.01. They sold it for $435. They purchased it for $299.99. So they made some money there. At least gross gain. $135.01. So if I look at eBay's take on this $435 sale, 435 times 0.135, their take is, let me do it again because that didn't turn out right. 435 times 0.135. $58.73. So eBay's take is, let's run it to $59. So they sold it for $435, and eBay took $59 away, right away. So the $135.01 gross gain, if I subtract $59 from that, okay, let me start it over because sometimes it keeps numbers in the calculator and it doesn't figure things out right. So the 135.01 gross gain minus, what was it, $58? $59. 59. Pretty sure that's right. So they made, their gain drops, gross drops to net gain, at least when figuring in eBay sell fees, to $76.01 and 10 cents. I'm sorry, $76.10. If I throw the 35 into it, let me do it one more time because 435 times 0.135. I think it was $59. Yeah, round up $59. 59. I take the gain of 135.01 and minus $59, just to make sure I got it right. $76.01. So that drops significantly because of eBay's cut. Now factor in the guesstimate of $35. So I take $76.01 and minus $35. Okay, so now we're talking about a $41, rounded down, $41.01. It's $41 net gain. And that's a guesstimate because I'm guessing $35 on Sideshows and with taxes and shipping and handling. So the 3 gross gains, one of them is for sure not a net gain. We know that. 2 of them are likely net gains. One was $22 and the other is $41. So are items appreciating? Not consistently, unfortunately. So there are 2 takeaways I can take, well, 3. Things aren't appreciating consistently. And that's because eBay takes a pretty hefty fee. Unless you can sell it somewhere else and not get fees and so forth really imposed upon you harshly, you may be able to make money. But at least on this forum, you're going to be lucky to get a gross gain. You're going to be luckier still to get a net gain. All right, so only 2 had net gains, and one was $21 and one was $42. No, one was $22 and one was $41. If my guesstimate of $35 from Sideshow is accurate. Everything else is a loss. All right, so apparently things aren't appreciating consistently. That's the first takeaway. The second takeaway that I had is that people are selling things, are taking risks at selling things more. Complete Hot Toys packages. And my thinking on that is that, we're pinching our pennies right now. The economy isn't, doing so great. We're pinching our pennies and we want more pennies to pinch. And so people are trying to sell more these days. The other thing that my husband thought of is that, we're getting close to the Christmas holidays. So some people may be buying things cheaper on eBay than they can get elsewhere. And case in point, a couple of the items that sold, let me double check, make sure I'm right with this. Black Widow Artisan. Okay, one of the items that sold is still on Sideshow's shelves. Last time I looked, before just a few minutes ago, this item is listed at $500. Well, this item that was listed at $500 sold for on eBay for $149. It's a Boba Fett Deluxe, which has 2 figures. $500. If you buy it from Sideshow, at least the price I saw yesterday, if you bought it on Sideshow, it would cost you $500. They still have it on their shelves. They're having trouble moving that thing, even though it came out some time ago, right? They're having trouble moving it. So if you can get it on eBay at $149 instead of buying it at Sideshow at $500, you're probably going to do that. So you're going to come out pretty good in terms of a deal here. And this might be a wonderful Christmas present for someone. Another Boba Fett that sold, again, as of yesterday, it was listed at $500. It sold for $167.50. So $149 or $169.50. That's a great deal. Set a deal on the same item. But I just looked at Sideshow, and it's on sale now instead of $500 for $450. But no matter how you look at it, right? $149 or $167.50 is better than $450. So if you do want something for Christmas, you know, there are deals to be had on the secondary market called eBay. So it's a buyer's market if you have the money. And it looks a little bit better at people buying things this month than it was last month. But it looks a little bit worse that more people are trying to sell things this month than they did last month. And it goes back to pinching the pennies again. So it's a mixed report as it was last month. And I know I didn't show you anything per se, like a figure or anything like that, but I hope the information proves useful to you in some way. So those are my conclusions, and I wish it was better news for sellers and buyers. It's definitely better for buyers than sellers, but you know, do people have the money to buy things? That's the other downside. So anyway, I hope you find the information useful. If you have found the information useful, I hope you can give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. In the meantime, everyone, please have a great day.